Each week on HR This Week, we'll take a look at one of the top stories in the news, and we'll talk to industry experts or HR professionals to hear their comments and insights. This week, we're taking a look at issues around employee moonlighting, or the practice of holding secondary or self-employment, and what to do when one of your workers has a job on the side. I have David Whitten, a partner at Whitten and Lublin, here to talk to me a bit about employee moonlighting. Thanks for coming, David.
My pleasure, Liz.
So employee moonlighting, it's been a bit of a hot topic lately. So legally, what are the limits employers can place on their employees when it comes to holding side jobs?
Well, Liz, some employers will incorporate what's called a full-time and attention provision into their contract of employment that makes it clear to their employees that they have to devote all of their working time and attention to their position. A lot of employers, in my experience, though, don't have those types of provisions, in which case it really depends on what the moonlighting job is. Is it competitive with what they're doing during the day? Is it involve them potentially having to disclose confidential information or other proprietary information, we say, from their day job? Those are the types of factors you look at when determining whether it's compliant with their job.
And is it legally permissible to outright ban your employees from moonlighting at all?
Well, it's an interesting question because you can have a full-time and attention clause in your contract that would give you a basis for terminating them. But the question, if they don't abide by it. But the real question is, to what extent could you terminate for cause, i.e. not provide a severance at all based on somebody's moonlighting? And that's going to come down to the similar types of things that I mentioned a moment ago. Is it competitive? Does it involve them disclosing confidential information? Does it impact their regular duties?
So when it comes to terminating for something like this, for moonlighting, what are the situations where an employer could be legally allowed to do that?
Well, every employee has what we call a duty of fidelity to their employer, which means they're not supposed to step out and cheat on them, so to speak, by taking on a job that's inconsistent with their current position or that's competitive. So in that type of situation, it's really going to come down to, has their job, moonlighting job, impacted their job? Have they been honest about it? If they fail to disclose it to their employer or they're not entirely candid, that could provide cause to terminate the employment. Depends how long they've been employed with their employer and what type of position they're in.
So what goes into determining if it is a conflict of interest with the employer? I know that can be kind of a gray area sometimes.
It is, and that's why it's a good practice for employers to create policies in this regard to stipulate what types of positions they would consider competitive or inconsistent with that person's role, explaining that one of the things that could happen if they are caught moonlighting is they could be terminated with or without cause. So it's excellent best practice to have these policies in place.
And are there any other things you can suggest as best practices for employers when it comes to moonlighting?
Well, I think employers should have some post-employment restrictions if they're at all concerned about their employees competing with them after their employment. But these same types of restrictions can be made clear for when a person is in their job before they've been terminated, making it clear that they're not to engage in competitive activities. Also have confidentiality policies, intellectual property policies that stipulate to the employee that if you're out of the office, you're not entitled to share our information or confidential information in another position.
All right, and what about when it's a situation where it's not a conflict of interest, but it's impacting the employee's performance negatively? They're sleeping on the job or something like that. That
becomes a disciplinary issue, and employers really then have to engage in progressive discipline, warn the employee that should it continue, they may be subject to further discipline. Performance improvement plans are another way to do that.
Great. Okay, thanks very much for coming, David.
Great to be here, Liz.